Hello everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Night, your favorite Reddit reading channel. Today we are back on our /askreddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe. What single human has done the most damage to the progression of humanity in the history of mankind? Guy de Chauliac. He was a surgeon in the 1300s who vehemently spoke out against another fellow surgeon, Theodoric Borgognoni. Theodoric was a surgeon who wrote about his theories on proper wound care and believed that the best thing you can do to a wound is wrap it and keep it clean. Guy hated what Theodoric was writing because it directly went against the teachings of Galen, an ancient Greek surgeon who believed pus was the body's way of balancing your humors. Guy's teachings were widely accepted, and it's believed that his ignorance set the development of antisepsis in surgery back about 600 years. Edit: Guy de Chauliac was born in the 1300s, not 1200s, as he was alive during the Black Death. Ignaz Semmelweis was the guy who was thrown into a mental asylum for saying surgeons should wash their hands between seeing patients. Purportedly, the unnamed inventor of flexible glass, Vitrum Flexel, brought a drinking bowl made of the material before Tiberius Caesar. The bowl was put through a test to break it, but it merely dented, rather than shattering. The inventor repaired the bowl easily with a small hammer, according to Petronius. After the inventor swore that he was the only man alive who knew the manufacturing technique, Tiberius had the man executed. He feared that the glass would devalue gold and silver, since the material might be more valuable. Robert Maxwell, father of Ghislaine. The man was the leading cause of paywalled scientific articles today. Before him, science publishing was relatively open. He helped shape the industry into the cancer on academia it is today. Edit: quite the thing to wake up to, thanks everyone. For those interested, I found an article that details the events pretty well. The Dr. version is that through use of PR marketing, exclusivity deals, and copyright law, Maxwell through Pergamon Press turned scientific publishing from a relatively non-profit-driven endeavor to a predatory industry that charged institutions out the nose for research they paid nothing for. Check out Alexandra and C-Hub. They've definitely helped many people who can't access scientific research. I would suggest Andrew Wakefield. His work Ileal lymphoid nodular hyperplasia, nonspecific colitis, and pervasive developmental disorder in children has been directly responsible for the mistrust of vaccines, the decline of Western rates of vaccination, and basically telling everybody that there's a boogeyman underneath your bed. He is directly responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. He's a scientist who made a mistake. Why are you blaming him? It's not that he made a mistake. He had purposely customized the outcomes to meet the hypothesis so that he could get rich selling safe vaccines and diagnostic kits. He poisoned the well that saved so many people just so he could get rich. I have no idea how he can sleep at night. On balance, vaccines may be the greatest human accomplishment of all time. People in developed countries really have no idea how bad disease has been for most of human history, precisely because of the success of vaccines and antibiotics. The vast majority of human deaths for most of our existence has been from disease. And for one brief century, we managed to push it back to the fringes of our awareness. But antibiotic resistance and anti-vaxxers seem determined to bring us back to the old standard. It really is such a huge slap in the face to take a look at this technology that has saved billions of lives, the pinnacle of human achievement, and just say frick you. The Ottoman caliphs who banned the printing press from the Muslim world. That's exactly how you destroy a civilization. Sheikh al-Islam. I heard of this guy after hearing someone on TV complain about how this man set the Islamic world back by centuries. In 1515, the age of the Ottoman Empire, he, a learned scholar of the kingdom, issued a decree that forbid printing, press, and made using it punishable by death. Emperor Zhezong of China. This is kind of an obscure story, so let me tell you the whole thing. It was the 12th century. When people talk about how China used to be the most technologically advanced part of the world, this is the period they're talking about. Some historians that they were on the brink of industrializing. Then Manchuria invaded and conquered northern China. The imperial court retreated to the south and declared Zhezong, the emperor's brother, as the new emperor. China's top general Yue Fei, who, according to some records, literally had patriotism tattooed on his back, though that might have been made up by someone who wanted to emphasize how unfair the rest of this story is, rallied his army and defeated the Manchus, and was raring to chase them out, but he gets orders from Zhezong to back down, because he'd rather negotiate. These negotiations ended up signing away the north half of China. A few years later, the Manchus invade again. Yue Fei beats them again and pushes all the way back to the old capital, Kaifeng. Then he gets the order to retreat. He responds with a letter saying that he's got the Manchus on the ropes, and he can reconquer northern China in like a month. No, says the emperor, retreat immediately. Eventually, Yue Fei does retreat, but he delays long enough to evacuate the city first, making up some logistical issues as an excuse. At this point, you may be wondering why Jaezong was so reluctant to push an advantage. The answer is that his brother was still alive. The king of Manchuria liked to bring him out once in a while and make fun of him. If Yue Fei reconquered China, he might liberate the rightful emperor, and Jaezong would be out of a job. As such, Jaezong was actively trying to throw the war. And he interpreted Yue Fei's delay at the end of this war as meaning that he had reached the point of at least considering going rogue, so as soon as Yue Fei got back, he was arrested, and promptly executed on treason on the ground of aver, he might have done something. Presumably because the optics on the actual charge almost winning a war we wanted to lose were too bad. People realized that this is bull quickly enough, and there are protests, but Jaezong manages to pin everything on one of his advisors and placated the mob by executing him. So how does this affect the long-term progression of humanity? Well, as I said, China might have been on the brink of industrializing at the time, but didn't have access to enough coal. There are coal deposits in China, but they're all in the north. Second, the Manchus never really got their internal issues sorted out, and 70 years later, were easily conquered by the Mongols, who then recruited a bunch of disaffected Chinese siege engineers. This essentially removed the one weakness of horse archer hordes: they're not good at taking fortresses, and allowed them to wreck half the world. Had China been united at the time, and it had been ruled fairly recently by a guy who had, if you recall, been taken prisoner by invaders from the north, so you can bet the defenses would be fairly well maintained, they probably could not have done this. So had it not been for the malice of this one man, the Mongols would probably never have become the juggernaut they eventually did, and the Industrial Revolution might have happened about 500 years ahead of schedule. That stupid fish that decided to leave water. Bakhtiyar Khilji. Hands down. In 12th century there was the world's biggest university in India named Nalanda, where intellectuals from all around the world used to study. Then Turks invaded India under Khilji. They killed almost all the intellectuals and destroyed the university. And they burnt the library. The library continued to burn for 3 months. This has to be by far the biggest loss to mankind in my opinion. Sir Mark Sykes. This man was the British element in the Sykes-Picot Agreement. For those of you not in the know, 100 years ago the Middle East was an area that did have some nations and some more tribal areas. So people were more divided by language and culture, some by religion. France and Britain decided to carve up the Middle East into easier to govern territories, but fumbled this task and instead divided the territories on the map over these religious and tribal lines. Not only has this been a main contributing cause of conflict in the Middle East, if you take two opposing or rival groups and then suddenly group them as one country, what do you expect? But said conflicts have then fueled further conflicts again and again. This has then been further used by Islamic extremists as a reason to hate the Western powers, as they were the ones who created this terrible agreement. Even Sykes himself accepted that the agreement's wording should be changed in order to give those countries autonomous rule. What is a little sad is he actually seemed to want to help these regions with the agreement, but just bumbled the whole thing, which has led to most of the issues the Middle East has to this day. Sykes didn't make the modern Middle East though, he just played a large part in creating the circumstances in which its current problems thrive. Imagine all of the advancement, education and collaboration that could have happened had the Middle East been allowed to flourish unhindered and without resentment. Edward Bernays. He created modern-day PR, which set the blueprint on how to control the masses by deception. Thomas Midgley Jr. Almost everything he invented has seriously harmed humanity. With his inventions, Thomas Midgley Jr. contributed to the poisoning of 3 generations of children, increased the risk of skin cancer and other skin problems related to exposure to UV rays, and contributed greatly to global warming. Whoever gave the order to burn the Library of Alexandria? I think I've read several theories about this, however, that make this far less impactful than the popular narrative suggests it is. 1. This was unlikely to be the only copy of Archimedes' work, especially as even in Constantinople it was very far from its place of origin. 2. Monasteries in general were one to protect any kind of text, and not merely those that were religious in nature. The fact then that they chose to overwrite this suggests that they did not believe this to be a particularly uncommon text at the time, lending further credence to point 1. 3. There were many other texts in the palimpsest other than Archimedes' Codex C, which one could make an equal argument as to the importance of. The choice of exalting one at the expense of all the others is technically just as much an overwriting, especially given the fact that it was not uncommon to write over expensive parchment at the time. 4. The work was overwritten only 700 years after it was first written. This makes it very unlikely to have been instrumental in any mathematical advancement had it not been overwritten regardless. 5. The fact that this manuscript survived, while few, if any, other copies of Archimedes' work survived, is less a testament to Monk's persistent overwriting, but more to do with how well taken care of the palimpsest was. Compare its fate in the 700 years it was in the possession of the church to what happened in the next 100 years alone. One could also ask what happened to every other copy of Archimedes' Codex C. That's at least my layman understanding of the matter. I might not be correct on all the details, but it's at least not as cut and dry as one errant monk erasing a few hundred years of mathematics. Genghis Khan. While he personally didn't do much to hinder human progress, his reign began an era of Mongol expansionism and devastation, and his successors were responsible for the destruction of the House of Wisdom of Baghdad, ending the Islamic Golden Age, and not to mention the destruction of numerous cities and the deaths of many. Also, the Mongol Empire eventually paved the way for the Black Death. The empire led to many trade routes being formed between Europe and Asia, which eventually led to the transmission of the Black Death to Europe in the 14th century. That's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.